Before we begin, picture a small American town in 1940, a place where every child was seen as a spark of hope, where the most promising young minds gathered, and where the future seemed to shine just a little brighter. Now, imagine that one morning, every single person inside the town's most celebrated school simply vanished. No signs of panic, no clues left behind, just empty classrooms and untouched lunches. The building still stands, frozen in time, and no one has dared to cross its threshold since that fateful day. What happened at Grayson Academy for Exceptional Youth? Tonight, we open the doors to a mystery that has haunted the town of Millfield for generations. Stay with me, because the truth behind this disappearance is stranger than any fiction. Millfield was the kind of place you'd expect to find in a storybook, nestled between rolling hills and thick, whispering woods. The seasons painted the town in gold, green, and white, and every neighbor greeted you by name. Life moved at a gentle pace. Children played in the fields, shopkeepers swept their stoops, and the church bell rang out every Sunday, calling the faithful to gather. But if you asked anyone in Millfield what made their town truly special, they'd all point to the same place. Grayson Academy perched proudly on the highest hill. The academy was more than just a school. It was a beacon, a symbol of hope, pride, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. Its red brick walls and tall arched windows caught the morning sun, and its bell tower could be seen from every corner of town. For decades, the academy had watched over Millfield, its presence both comforting and awe-inspiring. Grayson Academy was unlike any other school. Founded in 1910 by a group of educators and dreamers, it was built on the belief that every child carried a spark of greatness. The founders wanted a place where the brightest and most talented could learn, grow, and shine. The school's motto, carved in stone above the entrance, read, "To light the world, we must first kindle the flame within." Every year, children from Millfield and the surrounding towns would gather in the academy's grand auditorium, their hearts pounding with hope and nerves. The selection process was legendary. There were tests of logic and memory, music and art, puzzles and riddles. Only a handful of students were chosen each year, and those who made it were celebrated like heroes. Their families beamed with pride, and the whole town cheered them on. Inside the academy, life was a whirlwind of discovery. The classrooms were filled with sunlight and the scent of old books. The teachers were passionate and wise, each one an expert in their field. There was Miss Carter, who could make even the trickiest math seem like a magic trick, Mr. O'Malley, whose violin could bring tears to your eyes, and Mrs. Green, who taught art with a gentle hand and a sharp eye for hidden talent. The students were just as remarkable. There was Lucy, who could solve any puzzle in seconds. Peter, whose paintings seemed to come alive on the canvas. Clara, who played the piano as if she were born with music in her veins. And then there was Tommy Grayson, quiet and thoughtful, who always seemed to know the answer before the question was even asked. But for all its brilliance, the academy was not without its shadows. Some said the teachers were too strict, that the pressure to succeed was too much for young shoulders. Others whispered about strange things that happened late, and nightlights flickering in empty rooms, odd symbols drawn on the blackboards, and teachers who seemed to know things they shouldn't. But most people ignored the rumors. After all, the academy was a source of pride, and no one wanted to believe anything could be wrong. The town's pride in the academy was matched only by its sense of responsibility. Parents volunteered to help with events. Local businesses donated supplies, and the mayor himself attended every graduation ceremony. The academy was the heart of Millfield, and everyone felt its pulse. But beneath the surface, there were cracks. Some students struggled with the pressure, their smiles fading as the weeks went by. A few left the academy suddenly, their families refusing to talk about why. There were stories of children waking from nightmares, their faces pale and their eyes wide with fear. Some said the academy was haunted by the ghosts of those who had failed, their whispers echoing in the halls at night. Still, the academy thrived. Its students won awards, went on to famous universities, and made their families proud. The town basked in the glow of their success, never suspecting that darkness was gathering on the horizon. One autumn, a new headmaster arrived. Mr. Blackwell was a tall, thin man with sharp features and piercing eyes. He rarely smiled, and his voice was soft but commanding. He brought new rules, new expectations, and a sense of unease that settled over the academy like a fog. Some students thrived under his leadership, pushing themselves to new heights. Others wilted, their spirits crushed by the relentless drive for perfection. Mr. Blackwell was a mystery. He never spoke of his past, and no one knew where he had come from. Some said he had been a famous scholar. Others whispered that he had secrets of his own. But he was respected, even feared, and no one dared to question his authority. As the years passed, the academy's reputation grew. It became known as a place where greatness was born, where the gifted could reach their full potential. But beneath the surface, the shadows grew longer. Students became more withdrawn, teachers more distant. The laughter that once filled the halls was replaced by a tense, uneasy silence. And then, one winter, everything changed. It began with a rumor, a whisper that something terrible was coming. Some students spoke of strange dreams, of voices calling to them in the night. Others found odd symbols carved into their desks, or saw shadows moving in the corners of their eyes. The teachers grew more strict, their faces drawn and tired. Mr. Blackwell seemed to be everywhere at once, his eyes always watching. The town sensed that something was wrong, but no one knew what to do. Parents worried, but their children insisted. Everything was fine. The mayor called a meeting, but no one could agree on what, if anything, should be done. And so life went on. The academy prepared for its annual talent showcase, a night of music, art, and celebration. The students practiced their performances. The teachers decorated the auditorium, and the whole town buzzed with excitement. But beneath the surface, fear was growing. Some students whispered that this year's showcase would be different, that something was going to happen. A few begged their parents to let them stay home, but their pleas were dismissed as nerves. The night of the showcase arrived cold and clear. The auditorium was filled with parents, teachers, and townsfolk, all eager to see the students shine. The performances were brilliant music, poetry, paintings that took your breath away. Mr. Blackwell gave a speech about the importance of nurturing talent, of pushing boundaries, and reaching for greatness. After the showcase, the students returned to their dormitories. Some stayed up late, talking and laughing. Others went to bed early, tired from the excitement. No one suspected that anything was wrong. But outside, a storm was brewing. The wind howled through the trees, rattling the windows. Some students said they heard strange noises, whispers in the halls, footsteps where there should have been none. A few even claimed to see shadows moving in the darkness. By midnight, the academy was silent. The lights went out, and the only sound was the wind. The next morning, Millfield would wake to a world changed forever. But as the sun set on the academy, and its windows glowed with promise, no one could imagine the darkness about to descend. What secret did the academy's founders hide? And why did some students whisper of things they saw at night? In the next chapter, you'll meet the chosen few and discover the first cracks in the academy's perfect image. Stay with us. What you're about to learn will change everything you thought you knew about Grayson Academy. Every autumn, as the leaves turned gold and the air grew crisp, Millfield buzzed with anticipation. The opening of Grayson Academy's doors to a new class was the most important event of the year. For many families, it was a moment that could change the course of a child's life forever. The selection process was legendary, and the competition was fierce. Parents whispered encouragements to their children. Teachers at the local elementary school offered extra lessons, and the town's small library was filled with hopeful students. Poring over books late into the night, it all began with a letter. Each spring, the Academy sent out invitations to children who had shown exceptional promise, whether in academics, music, art, or even in the way they solved problems or helped others. The letter itself was a thing of beauty. Heavy cream-colored paper, the school's crest embossed in gold, and signed in elegant script by the headmaster, Mr. Blackwell. For many families, receiving that letter was a moment of pure joy, a sign that their child was truly special. But the letter was only the beginning. The real test came in the form of a week-long series of challenges held at the Academy itself. The children arrived nervous and excited, clutching their letters in their parents' hands. The school, perched on its hill, looked even grander up. Close, its red bricks glowing in the morning sun, its tall windows reflecting the sky. Inside, the atmosphere was electric. The halls were filled with the sound of footsteps, laughter, and the occasional nervous sob. The teachers, dressed in their formal black robes, moved through the crowds with calm authority, offering gentle smiles and words of encouragement. But there was an undercurrent of tension, a sense that something important was about to happen. The first day was devoted to academics. The children were given puzzles to solve, math problems to unravel, and stories to read and interpret. The tests were difficult but fair, designed to challenge the mind and reveal hidden talents. Some children thrived, their eyes lighting up as they solved each problem. Others struggled, their confidence wavering as the questions grew harder. Second day was devoted to the arts. The children were asked to draw, paint, sing, and play instruments. The music room was filled with the sound of piano keys, violins, and voices rising in song. The art studio was a riot of color as children painted scenes from their imaginations. The teachers watched closely, noting not just skill, but passion and creativity. The third day was all about teamwork. The children were divided into groups and given challenges to solve together, building bridges from sticks and string, creating stories as a team, or working together to solve a mystery. Here, the teachers looked for leaders, for those who could inspire and support others, as well as those who could listen and learn. By the end of the week, the children were exhausted but exhilarated. They had made new friends, faced new challenges, and discovered strengths they never knew they had. But they also knew that not everyone would be chosen. The final selection was made in secret, the teachers and headmaster meeting late into the night to discuss each child's performance. On the last day, the children and their families gathered in the Academy's grand auditorium. The air was thick with anticipation. Mr. Blackwell stood on the stage, his tall figure casting a long shadow in the morning light. He spoke softly, but his words carried to every corner of the room. "You are all remarkable," he said. "You have shown courage, creativity, and kindness. But Grayson Academy can only accept a few each year. If your name is called, you will join a family that will challenge you, support you, and help you become the best version of yourself. If your name is not called, know that you are still special, and that greatness can be found in many places." One by one, the names were read. Each child who was chosen walked to the stage, their faces a mix of pride and disbelief. Their families wept with joy, and the town cheered. For those not chosen, there were tears, but also hugs and words of encouragement. The teachers made sure every child left with their head held high. The new students were given uniforms crisp, white shirts, navy blazers, and the school's crest embroidered on the pocket. They were shown to their dormitories, where they would live and study together for the next year. The dorms were cozy, with wooden beds, soft quilts, and windows that looked out over the rolling hills. The bonds formed in those first days were strong. The students came from different backgrounds, but they shared a sense of purpose, a desire to prove themselves. They studied together, played together, and shared secrets late into the night. Some became fast friends, while others found themselves in quiet competition, always striving to be the best. But beneath the surface, there were tensions. The pressure to succeed was immense, and not everyone thrived under it. Some students began to withdraw, their smiles fading as the weeks went by. Others became fiercely competitive, unwilling to share their ideas or help their classmates. The teachers watched closely, stepping in when needed, but the atmosphere was charged. The teachers themselves were a mysterious group. Some were young and enthusiastic, eager to inspire their students. Others were older, with a strict, almost cold demeanor. There was Miss Carter, the math teacher, who seemed to know every answer before the question was asked. Mr. O'Malley, the music teacher, whose eyes sparkled with mischief, but who could be stern when needed. And Mrs. Green, the art teacher, who spoke little, but whose gaze seemed to see right through you. But it was the headmaster, Mr. Blackwell, who was the most enigmatic. He rarely smiled, and his presence seemed to fill every room he entered. He had a way of looking at you that made you feel both important and insignificant at the same time. Some students admired him, others feared him, but all respected his authority. As the weeks passed, strange things began to happen. Some students complained of odd dreams, visions of shadowy figures, whispers in the night, and symbols that glowed in the darkness. Others found strange marks on their desks or heard footsteps in the halls when no one was there. A few even claimed to see teachers moving through the school late at night, their faces hidden in shadow. The rules at the academy were strict. Lights out at 9, no leaving the dormitories after dark, and no talking about the selection process with anyone outside. The students followed the rules, but some began to question them. Why were the teachers so secretive? Why were certain rooms always locked? And what was the meaning of the strange symbol carved into the stone above the entrance? One night, a group of students decided to investigate. They waited until the dormitory was quiet, then slipped out into the halls. The school was silent, the only sound the creak of the old wooden floors. They made their way to the forbidden wing, where the oldest classrooms were kept locked. As they approached, they heard voices soft, urgent, and unfamiliar. Peeking through a crack in the door, they saw a group of teachers gathered around a table, their faces lit by candlelight. On the table was a large book, its pages filled with strange symbols. The teachers spoke in hushed tones, their words too quiet to hear. Suddenly, Mr. Blackwell looked up, his eyes meeting those of the students. The group fled, their hearts pounding, and never spoke of what they had seen. After that night, the atmosphere of the academy grew even more tense. The teachers seemed more watchful, the rules more strictly enforced. Some students became ill, complaining of headaches and fatigue. Others grew withdrawn, refusing to speak or eat. The sense of unease grew, and the students began to whisper about leaving. But for most, the dream of greatness was too strong. They pushed aside their fears, focused on their studies, and tried to ignore the strange things happening around them. Academy continued to win awards. Its students continued to shine, and the town continued to bask in its reflected glory. But beneath the surface, the cracks were growing wider. The bonds between students began to fray. Old friendships turned to rivalry, and the sense of family that had once defined the academy began to fade. The teachers grew more distant, their faces drawn and tired. Mr. Blackwell became a shadow, always present but never truly seen. As the year drew to a close, the students prepared for the annual talent showcase, a night of music, art, and celebration. But this year, the excitement was tinged with fear. Some students whispered that something terrible was coming, that the academy was not what it seemed. A few begged their parents to let them come home, but their pleas were dismissed as nerves. The night of the showcase arrived cold and clear. The auditorium was filled with parents, teachers, and townsfolk, all eager to see the students shine. The performances were brilliant music, poetry, paintings that took your breath away. Mr. Blackwell gave a speech about the importance of nurturing talent, of pushing boundaries, and reaching for greatness. But as the applause faded and the students returned to their dormitories, a sense of dread settled over the academy. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows. Some students said they heard whispers in the halls, footsteps where there should have been none. A few even claimed to see shadows moving in the darkness. By midnight, the academy was silent. The lights went out, and the only sound was the wind. The next morning, Millfield would wake to a world changed forever. The morning of March 14, 1940, dawned with a strange golden light over Millfield. The sun rose quietly, painting the town in soft hues of pink and orange, as if the world itself was holding its breath. At the top of the hill, Grayson Academy stood silent and proud, its red bricks glowing in the early light. For the students and teachers inside, it was a day like any other, or so it seemed. The day began with the usual routine. The bell rang at 7, echoing through the halls and waking the students from their dreams. Some woke with a start, their hearts pounding from nightmares they couldn't quite remember. Others lingered in bed, savoring the last moments of warmth before the day began. The dormitories buzzed with quiet conversation, laughter, and the rustle of uniforms being pulled on. Breakfast was served in the grand dining hall, where long tables were set with bowls of porridge, fresh bread, and fruit. The students gathered in small groups, talking about the upcoming talent showcase, the last big event before spring break. There was excitement in the air, but also a strange tension, an undercurrent of nerves that no one could quite explain. Lucy, the puzzle prodigy, sat with her friends, her eyes scanning the room. She noticed that Peter, the artist, looked pale and tired, his hands trembling as he buttered his toast. Clara, the pianist, was unusually quiet, her fingers drumming a nervous rhythm on the table. Tommy Grayson, always the calmest among them, seemed distracted, his gaze distant. "Are you all right?" Lucy asked, her voice soft. Peter managed a weak smile. "Just a bad dream, I guess. Didn't sleep much." Clara nodded. "Me too. I kept hearing music in my sleep. It was beautiful, but sad." Tommy didn't say anything, but Lucy saw the worry in his eyes. Across the hall, the teachers watched their students with a mixture of pride and concern. Miss Carter, the math teacher, whispered something to Mr. O'Malley, who nodded gravely. Mrs. Green, the art teacher, seemed lost in thought, her gaze fixed on the window. The headmaster, Mr. Blackwell, entered the hall with his usual quiet authority. The room fell silent as he took his place at the front, his eyes sweeping over. "The students, today is a special day," he said, his voice calm and steady. "Tonight you will share your gifts with the world. Remember, greatness is not just about talent, but about courage, kindness, and the willingness to face the unknown. I am proud of each and every one of you." His words were meant to inspire, but Lucy felt a chill run down her spine. There was something in his tone, something final. After breakfast, the students went to their classes. The morning passed in a blur of lessons and last-minute rehearsals. The teachers were more patient than usual, offering gentle encouragement and quiet smiles, but there was a sense of urgency, as if everyone knew that time was running out. In the art room, Peter put the finishing touches on his painting, a swirling landscape of color and light. Mrs. Green stood behind him, her hand on his shoulder. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "You have a gift, Peter. Don't ever forget that." Peter smiled, but there was sadness in his eyes. "Thank you, Mrs. Green. I just wish my parents could be here tonight." "They're proud of you," she assured him. "We all are." In the music room, Clara practiced her piece on the grand piano. The notes filled the air, rising and falling like waves. Mr. O'Malley listened quietly, his eyes closed. "You play with your heart," he said when she finished. "That's what makes you special." Clara blushed. "I'm nervous, Mr. O'Malley. What if I make a mistake?" He smiled. "Mistakes are part of life, Clara. What matters is that you keep playing." In the math classroom, Lucy solved a complex puzzle on the blackboard. Miss Carter watched, her eyes shining with pride. "You're ready," she said. "You always have been," Lucy grinned. "Thank you, Miss Carter. I couldn't have done it without you." The afternoon was devoted to final preparations for the showcase. The auditorium was a hive of activity students setting up displays, teachers arranging chairs, and the janitors sweeping the stage. The air was thick with anticipation. As the sun began to set, the students changed into their best clothes. The girls wore dresses, the boys wore suits, and everyone looked their best. The teachers gathered in the staff room, sharing quiet words and nervous glances. Mr. Blackwell stood by the window, watching the sky darken. He seemed lost in thought, his face unreadable. "Are you all right, Headmaster?" Miss Carter asked gently. He nodded. "Just thinking about the future, Miss Carter. Tonight is important for all of us." The townspeople began to arrive, filling the auditorium with laughter and excitement. Parents hugged their children, friends greeted each other, and the mayor took his seat in the front row. The room buzzed with energy. Backstage, the students gathered in a circle, holding hands. "Good luck, everyone," Lucy said. "Let's make this a night to remember." The showcase began with a welcome from Mr. Blackwell. He spoke about the importance of nurturing talent, of supporting each other, and of facing challenges with courage. His words were met with applause, but Lucy noticed that his hands were shaking. The performances were brilliant. Peter unveiled his painting to gasps of admiration. Clara played her piece flawlessly, her music bringing tears to the eyes of many. In the audience, Lucy solved a complex puzzle on stage, her mind working faster than anyone had ever seen. Tommy recited a poem he had written, his voice steady and strong. The audience cheered. The teachers beamed with pride, and the students felt a sense of accomplishment that was almost overwhelming. But beneath the joy, there was a sense of unease. Some parents whispered about the strange dreams their children had been having. Others noticed that a few students seemed distracted, their smiles forced. The teachers exchanged worried glances, but said nothing. After the showcase, there was a reception in the dining hall. Tables were laden with cakes, cookies, and punch. The students mingled with their families, accepting congratulations and hugs, but Lucy couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She found Peter standing alone by the window, staring out at the darkening sky. "Are you okay?" she asked. He nodded, but didn't look at her. "I just have a bad feeling, Lucy, like something's about to happen." Lucy squeezed his hand. "We'll be fine. It's just nerves." But as the night wore on, the feeling of dread grew stronger. The wind picked up outside, rattling the windows. The lights flickered, and the air grew cold. The students returned to their dormitories, saying good night to their families and teachers. Some stayed up late talking and laughing, trying to shake off the unease. Others went to bed early, hoping that sleep would bring relief. Lucy lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling. She thought about the showcase, about her friends, and about the strange dream she had been having. She heard whispers in the hallway, footsteps on the stairs, and the distant sound of music. She got up and looked out the window. The school grounds were empty, the trees swaying in the wind. In the distance, she saw a figure standing by the old oak tree, a tall, thin man in a dark coat. She blinked, and he was gone. Lucy shivered and climbed back into bed, pulling the covers up to her chin. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep, but the feeling of dread would not leave her. In the boys' dormitory, Tommy sat at his desk, writing in his journal. He wrote about the showcase, about his friends, and about the strange things he had seen. He wrote about the symbol carved into the stone above the entrance, and about the teachers' secret meetings. He paused, listening to the wind. He thought. He heard someone calling his name, but when he looked out the window, there was no one there. In the teachers' quarters, Miss Carter sat by the fire, her hands trembling. She thought about her students, about the dreams they had shared with her, and about the feeling that something terrible was coming. She got up and walked to the window, looking out at the school grounds. She saw the same figure Lucy had seen. Tall, thin man in a dark coat, standing by the old oak tree. She watched as he raised his hand as if waving to her. She blinked, and he was gone. Miss Carter shivered and returned to her chair, pulling her shawl tighter around her shoulders. As midnight approached, the academy grew silent. The wind howled outside, and the lights flickered. The students slept fitfully, their dreams filled with shadows and whispers. The teachers sat in their rooms, unable to sleep, their minds racing with worry. In the headmaster's office, Mr. Blackwell sat at his desk, staring at the strange symbol drawn on a piece of paper. He traced the lines with his finger, his face pale and drawn. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the school grounds. He saw the figure by the old oak tree, and this time the figure did not disappear. Mr. Blackwell opened the window, letting the cold air rush in. He heard a voice whisper, soft and urgent. "It's time," the voice said. Mr. Blackwell nodded, his eyes filling with tears. He closed the window and returned to his desk, sitting in the darkness. As the clock struck midnight, a strange silence fell over the academy. The wind stopped, the lights went out, and the world seemed to hold its breath. In the morning, Millfield would wake to a world changed forever. The talent showcase was meant to be a celebration, but as night fell, the academy's walls seemed to close in. What did Lucy see outside her window? Why did the headmaster's words sound like a farewell? In the next chapter, the unthinkable happens. The morning after will leave you questioning everything. Stay tuned. What's coming will haunt you, and you won't want to miss the chilling discovery. The sun rose over Millfield on March 15, 1940, just as it always had. The sky was a pale, cloudless blue, and the air was crisp with the promise of spring. But as the first rays of light touched the red bricks of Grayson Academy, something was different. The bell did not ring. The laughter and chatter of children did not echo down the hill. The academy, usually alive with energy, stood silent and still. At first, no one noticed. Parents assumed their children were still sleeping, tired from the excitement of the previous night's showcase. Shopkeepers opened their stores, farmers headed to their fields, and the town's daily rhythm began. But as the morning wore on, a sense of unease crept through Millfield. The school bell, which always rang at 8, remained silent. No students walked down the hill. No teachers hurried to their classrooms. Mrs. Parker, whose daughter Clara was a student, was the first to act. She stood at her kitchen window, waiting for the familiar sight of children in their uniforms. When none appeared, she grew anxious. She called her neighbor, Mrs. Evans, whose son Tommy was also at the academy. "Have you seen the children this morning?" Mrs. Parker asked, her voice tight with worry. "No," Mrs. Evans replied, glancing out her own window. "Not a soul. Maybe they're having a late breakfast." But Mrs. Parker couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She put on her coat and walked up the hill, her heart pounding with every step. As she approached the academy, she saw that the gates were open, swinging gently in the breeze. The building loomed above her, its windows dark and empty. She called out, her voice echoing in the silence, "Clara? Is anyone there?" There was no answer. Other parents soon joined her, their faces pale with fear. Together they entered the academy, their footsteps echoing in the empty halls. What they found inside would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Every classroom was empty. Desks were neatly arranged, books open, pencils still in hand. The blackboards were covered in lessons from the day before. In the dining hall, plates of uneaten food sat on the tables as if the students had simply vanished in the middle of breakfast. Beds in the dormitories were made, clothes folded, shoes lined up by the doors. It was as if time had stopped. The teachers' quarters were just as empty. Miss Carter's shawl was draped over her chair. Mr. O'Malley's violin rested on his desk, and Mrs. Green's paintbrushes were still wet. The headmaster's office was locked, but when the parents forced the door open, they found it empty as well. Mr. Blackwell's chair was pushed back from his desk, and a single piece of paper lay on the surface. A strange symbol drawn in black ink, a circle with a line through it, surrounded by smaller marks. Panic spread through the town. The police were called, and soon the academy was swarming with officers, detectives, and townsfolk. They searched every room, every closet, every inch of the grounds. They called out the names of the missing, their voices growing more desperate with each passing hour. But there was nothing. No signs of struggle, no broken windows or forced doors, no footprints in the dust, no notes, no clues. It was as if every student and teacher had simply disappeared into thin air. The news spread quickly. Reporters arrived from nearby towns, their cameras flashing as they interviewed parents and police. The story made headlines across the state. The school that vanished. Over 100 children and teachers gone without a trace. The nation was captivated by the mystery, and soon people from all over the country were talking about Millfield. Theories began to swirl. Some said the academy had been cursed, that the land itself was haunted. Others believed it was the work of a cult, or that the children had been taken for some dark purpose. A few whispered about secret tunnels beneath the building or experiments gone wrong. But no matter how hard they searched, the investigators found nothing. The strange symbol on the headmaster's desk became the focus of much speculation. Experts in ancient languages and secret societies were brought in, but no one could identify it. Some said it was a warning. Others thought it was a message. The symbol appeared nowhere else in the academy, and no one could remember seeing it before. As the days turned into weeks, hope began to fade. The search parties grew smaller. The reporters moved on to other stories, and the town was left with its grief and its questions. The academy was closed, its doors locked, and windows boarded up. A memorial service was held for the lost students and teachers, but there were no answers, only sorrow. The building itself became a place of fear. No one dared to enter. Some said the place was haunted, that you could hear the voices of children if you stood outside at night. Others claimed to see lights flickering in the windows or shadows moving behind the curtains. The academy became a symbol of the unknown, a reminder that some mysteries are never meant to be solved. The town of Millfield changed. Families moved away, unable to bear the memories. New businesses struggled to survive, and the once thriving community grew quiet and withdrawn. The academy, once a beacon of hope, now cast a long shadow over the town, but the story did not die. It was told and retold, each version darker than the last. Some said the students had been taken to another world. Others believed they were still alive, trapped somewhere between life and death. Theories multiplied, but the truth remained elusive. Years later, a radio program called America's Unsolved Mysteries would bring the story to a new generation. Millions listened, their curiosity piqued by the promise of horror and mystery. But for the people of Millfield, the story was not entertainment. It was a wound that had never fully healed. The academy remained silent and waiting, its secrets locked away. The building stood untouched, its red bricks slowly fading, its windows gathering dust. No one dared to enter. The legend grew and the questions lingered. What happened to the students and teachers of Grayson Academy? Where did they go? And why? Did they leave behind a symbol that no one could understand? The answers, if they existed, were hidden deep within the walls of the academy, a place frozen in time, haunted by the memory of those who had vanished overnight. As the years passed, the academy became a place of legend. Children dared each other to run up to the boarded windows and touch the door. Some claimed to have seen faces in the glass or heard music playing in the empty halls. The bravest among them would sneak out after dark, hearts pounding, just to see if the stories were true. But no one ever stayed long. The building had a way of making you feel watched, as if the eyes of the missing were still there, waiting for someone to find them. The town tried to move on, but the shadow of the academy lingered. It was a constant reminder of what had been lost and of the questions that would never be answered. And so Grayson Academy stood silent and untouched, a monument to a mystery that had changed Millfield forever. The academy was empty, but the questions had only just begun. What was the meaning of the strange symbol? Why did the building feel as if it was waiting for something or someone to return? Next, the search for answers begins, and the town's grief turns to obsession. If you think the mystery ends here, think again. The investigation is about to spiral into the unknown. The days after the vanishing at Grayson Academy were unlike anything Millfield had ever known. The town, once so full of hope and pride, was now gripped by a fear that seeped into every home and every heart. The academy, which had once stood as a beacon on the hill, now loomed over the town like a silent accusation. The question on everyone's lips was the same. How could an entire school, students, teachers, staff disappear without a trace? The investigation began immediately. The local police, led by Chief Harold Mason, were the first to arrive. Chief Mason was a practical man, not given to wild theories or superstition. He believed in facts, in evidence, in the idea that every mystery had a logical explanation. But as he walked through the empty halls of the academy, even he felt a chill run down his spine. The first step was to search the building from top to bottom. Officers moved through every classroom, every closet, every storage room. They checked the attic, the basement, the boiler room. They looked for signs of forced entry, for broken windows, for anything that might suggest a struggle. But there was nothing. The academy was as neat and orderly as if it were waiting for the students to return at any moment. The only thing out of place was the symbol found on the headmaster's desk, a circle with a line through it, surrounded by smaller marks. Chief Mason stared at it for a long time, trying to make sense of it. He called in experts from the state capital, hoping someone would recognize the symbol, but no one did. It was as if it had been invented for this very moment, a message meant for no one but those who had vanished. Outside, the search continued. Volunteers from the town joined the police, forming search parties that combed the woods, the fields, and the riverbanks. They called out the names of the missing, their voices echoing in the stillness. They found nothing. No footprints, no clothing, no sign that anyone had left the academy grounds. The families of the missing were desperate for answers. Mothers and fathers gathered at the school gates, clutching photographs of their children, begging for news. Some wept openly, their grief raw and unfiltered. Others stood in stunned silence, unable to accept what had happened. The teachers' families were just as distraught, their lives upended by the loss of loved ones who had simply vanished. The town's mayor, Mr. Alden, called a meeting at the town hall. The building was packed with anxious townsfolk, their faces pale and drawn. Chief Mason stood at the front, flanked by his officers. "We are doing everything we can," he said, his voice steady but tired. "We have searched the academy and the surrounding area. We have contacted authorities in neighboring towns. We are following every lead, but so far we have found nothing." A woman in the crowd stood up, her voice trembling. "What about the symbol? What does it mean?" Chief Mason shook his head. "We don't know. We sent photographs to experts, but no one recognizes it. If anyone here has seen it before, please come forward." No one did. Theories began to spread, each more outlandish than the last. Some said the academy had been cursed, that the land itself was haunted. Others believed it was the work of a cult, that the children and teachers had been taken for some dark purpose. A few whispered about secret tunnels beneath the building or experiments gone wrong. But no matter how hard they searched, the investigators found nothing. The newspapers seized on the story, sending reporters to Millfield to interview anyone who would talk. Headlines screamed from every newsstand, "The school that vanished." Over 100 children and teachers gone without a trace. The mystery of Millfield. The nation was captivated by the story, and soon people from all over the country were talking about the little town on the hill. The attention brought little comfort to the families of the missing. They were hounded by reporters. Their grief turned into spectacle. Some retreated into their homes, refusing to speak to anyone. Others lashed out in anger, blaming the academy, the police, even each other, for what had happened. The investigation dragged on for weeks, then months. The police followed every lead, no matter how unlikely. They interviewed everyone who had been at the talent showcase, searching for any detail that might have been overlooked. They checked train stations, bus depots, and hospitals across the state. They even brought in psychics, hoping for a miracle. But the result was always the same: nothing. The strange symbol became an obsession for some. A local librarian, Mrs. Whitaker, spent hours poring over old books, searching for anything that might explain its meaning. She found references to similar symbols in ancient text marks used by secret societies, by alchemists, by those who believed in other worlds, but none matched exactly. The symbol remained a mystery, a riddle with no answer. As the weeks turned into months, hope began to fade. The search parties grew smaller, the reporters moved on to other stories, and the town was left with its grief and its questions. The academy was closed, its doors locked, and the windows boarded up. A memorial service was held for the lost students and teachers, but there were no answers, only sorrow. The emotional toll on Millfield was immense. The town, once so full of life, became quiet and withdrawn. Families moved away, unable to bear the memories. Businesses struggled, and the sense of community that had once defined Millfield began to unravel. But the story did not die. It was told and retold, each version darker than the last. Some said the students had been taken to another world. Others believed they were still alive, trapped somewhere between life and death. Theories multiplied, but the truth remained elusive. Academy itself became a place of fear. No one dared to enter. Some said the place was haunted, that you could hear the voices of children if you stood outside at night. Others claimed to see lights flickering in the windows or shadows moving. Behind the curtains, the academy became a symbol of the unknown, a reminder that some mysteries are never meant to be solved. The town tried to move on, but the shadow of the academy lingered. It was a constant reminder of what had been lost and of the questions that would never be answered. As the years passed, the academy became a place of legend. Children dared each other to run up to the boarded windows and touch the door. Some claimed to have seen faces in the glass or heard music playing in the empty halls. The bravest among them would sneak out after dark, hearts pounding, just to see if the stories were true. But no one ever stayed long. The building had a way of making you feel watched, as if the eyes of the missing were still there, waiting for someone to find them. The legend grew and the questions lingered. What happened to the students and teachers of Grayson Academy? Where did they go? And why did they leave behind a symbol that no one could understand? The answers, if they existed, were hidden deep within the walls of the academy, a place frozen in time, haunted by the memory of those who had vanished overnight. And so Grayson Academy stood, silent and untouched, a monument to a mystery that had changed Millfield forever. The searchers found nothing but silence. Yet the legend only grew. What did the investigators miss? And why did the Academy's shadow seem to grow longer with each passing year? In the next chapter, the haunted years begin ghost stories, dares, and a building that refuses to let go of its secrets. The real horror is just beginning. The years after the vanishing at Grayson Academy were marked by a silence that seemed to settle over Millfield like a heavy fog. The town, once so lively and full of hope, became a place of whispers and shadows. The academy itself, perched on its lonely hill, was now a monument to loss, a building frozen in time, untouched and unentered, its secrets locked away behind boarded windows and rusted gates dotted first. There was hope that the missing would return. Some families kept their children's rooms just as they had left them, beds made and toys neatly arranged, as if expecting them to walk through the door at any moment. Mothers set extra places at the dinner table. Fathers left porch lights burning through the night. But as the seasons changed and the years slipped by, hope faded into sorrow, and sorrow hardened into something else, a quiet, aching fear. The academy became the center of that fear. No one dared to go near it. The grass grew tall and wild around. The building and the once bright red bricks faded to a dull, lifeless brown. The bell tower, which had once called the town's children to class, now stood silent, its bell rusted and still. The windows, once filled with sunlight and laughter, were now dark and empty, reflecting only the sky and the tangled branches of the trees that crept ever closer. Children who had once dreamed of attending Grayson Academy now crossed the street to avoid even looking at it. They whispered stories to each other, stories of ghosts and curses, of voices in the night and faces at the windows. The bravest among them dared each other to run up to the front door and touch the handle, but none ever stayed long. The building had a way of making you feel watched, as if the eyes of the missing were still there, waiting for someone to find them. Teenagers, too, were drawn to the academy, especially as the years passed and the story became legend. On moonless nights, groups of friends would sneak up the hill, flashlights in hand, hearts pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. They would circle the building, daring each other to peek through the cracks in the boards or to knock on the door. Some claimed to have seen strange lights flickering inside, or to have heard music playing in the empty halls. Others said they felt a cold hand on their shoulder, or heard their name whispered in the darkness. But no one ever went inside. The doors were locked tight, the windows nailed shut. The few who tried to break in found themselves overcome by a sense of dread so powerful that they turned and ran, unable to explain what had frightened them. The academy, it seemed, did not want to be entered. The adults of Millfield were no less affected. Many avoided the hill altogether, taking longer routes to work or to the market just to keep the academy out of sight. Some moved away, unable to bear the constant reminder of what had been lost. Those who stayed grew quieter, more withdrawn. The town's once bustling main street was now lined with empty shops and shuttered windows. The church, which had once been filled every Sunday, now echoed with the voices of only a few faithful. The emotional scars ran deep. Every family in Millfield had been touched by the tragedy, if not directly, then through friends, neighbors, or memories. The town's sense of community, once so strong, was now fractured. People kept to themselves, wary of strangers and of each other. Trust was hard to come by, and the old sense of safety was gone. The Academy's legend grew with each passing year. New stories were added to the old. Stories of secret societies, of portals to other worlds, of government experiments gone wrong. Some said the Academy had been built on cursed land, that the spirits of the past had claimed the students and teachers. Others believed it was the work of a cult, or that the children had been taken for some dark purpose. A few whispered about the strange symbol found on the headmaster's desk, suggesting it was a key to another world, a portal that had swallowed the Academy whole. Theories multiplied, but the truth remained elusive. As the decades passed, the building itself began to change. The paint peeled from the doors, the roof sagged, and the garden became a tangle of weeds and thorns. Birds nested in the eaves, and raccoons made their homes in the basement. But the Academy remained standing, stubborn and silent, as if waiting for something or someone to return. A few brave souls tried to enter over the years. Some were researchers drawn by the legend and the hope of solving the mystery. Others were thrill-seekers eager for a taste of the supernatural. All returned shaken, refusing to speak of what they had seen. Some claimed to have found fresh footprints in the dust or to have heard music playing in the empty halls. Others said they saw shadows moving behind the windows or felt a cold hand on their shoulder. One local legend told of a group of teenagers who, on a dare, managed to pry open a window and slip inside. They wandered the halls, their flashlights flickering in the darkness. They found the classrooms just as they had been left, desks neatly arranged, books open, pencils still in hand. In the dining hall, plates of uneaten food sat on the tables, as if the students had simply vanished in the middle of breakfast. The dormitories were just as untouched, beds made, clothes folded, shoes lined up by the doors. But as they explored, the air grew colder, and the sense of being watched became overwhelming. One by one, the teenagers began to panic. Convinced they were not alone, they fled the building, leaving behind their flashlights and their courage. When they returned to their friends, they were pale and shaken, unable to explain what had frightened them so deeply. The story spread quickly, adding another layer to the legend. Some said the teenagers had seen the ghosts of the missing wandering the halls in silence. Others claimed they had heard the voices of the dead whispering in the darkness. The Academy's reputation as a place of fear was cemented. The town tried to move on, but the shadow of the Academy lingered. It was a constant reminder of what had been lost and of the questions that would never be answered. The emotional impact on Millfield was profound. The town's once bright future now seemed uncertain, its dreams haunted by the past. The Academy, which had once been a source of pride, was now a symbol of grief and fear. The families of the missing carried their sorrow with them, their lives forever changed by the events of that terrible night. But even as the years passed, hope was not entirely lost. Some believed that the missing would one day return, that the mystery would be solved, and that Millfield would heal. Others accepted that the truth might never be known, but found comfort in the memories of happier times. Grayson Academy remained silent and untouched, a monument to a mystery that had changed Millfield forever. Its secrets were locked away, waiting for someone brave enough or foolish enough to uncover them. And so the haunted years passed, each one adding to the legend, each one deepening the mystery. The Academy stood as a reminder that some questions have no answers, and that some stories are never truly over. The Academy stood untouched, but its legend was alive. What drew the bravest and the most foolish back to its doors? And what did they find when they dared to enter? Next, you'll hear the wildest theories and the most chilling legends, from portals to other worlds to secret societies. The truth is stranger than any story you've heard so far. As the decades slipped by, Grayson Academy became more than just a building on a hill. It became a story, a warning, a riddle that no one could solve. The longer the academy stood empty, the more the legend grew, twisting and changing with every retelling. In Millfield and far beyond, the question was always the same. What really happened to the students and teachers who vanished overnight? Theories multiplied like shadows at dusk. Some were whispered in fear, others told with a shiver of excitement. Some were born from grief, others from the need to make sense of the senseless. But all of them, in their own way, tried to fill the silence left by the missing. One of the oldest theories was that the academy had been built on cursed land. Some said the hill was once a burial ground, a place where ancient rituals had been performed. They pointed to the strange symbol found on the headmaster's desk, a circle with a line through it, surrounded by smaller marks, and claimed it was a sign, a warning left by those who had come before. Local historians dug through old records, searching for evidence of curses or tragedies, but found only rumors and half-remembered tales. Others believed the academy had been the site of secret experiments. This theory gained traction in the 1950s, when stories of government projects and hidden laboratories were common. Some said the teachers were not who they claimed to be, that they were scientists or agents sent to study the gifted children. The symbol, they argued, was a code, a mark of a secret society. They imagined hidden rooms beneath the academy filled with strange machines and forbidden knowledge. But when researchers came to investigate, they found nothing but dust and silence. Third theory was that the academy had become a portal to another world. This idea was especially popular among the town's children, who loved to imagine the missing students and teachers living in a parallel universe just out of reach. They pictured a world where the academy was still alive, where lessons continued, and laughter echoed through the halls. Some even claimed to have seen glimpses of this other world in their dreams. A flash of color, a familiar face, a voice calling from the darkness. There were those who believed the disappearance was the work of a cult. They pointed to the strict rules, the secretive teachers, and the sense of isolation that had always surrounded the academy. They imagined midnight rituals, whispered prayers, and a final ceremony that had taken everyone away. The symbol, they sighed, was a key, a sign of allegiance to something ancient and powerful. But no evidence of a cult was ever found, and the theory remained just another story got as the legend grew. So did the number of people drawn to Millfield. Journalists, researchers, and curiosity seekers arrived, hoping to uncover the truth. Some wrote books, others made documentaries, and a few even tried to spend the night in the academy. Most left disappointed, finding only dust and echoes. But a few claimed to have experienced something strange: cold spots, unexplained noises, or the feeling of being watched. One of the most famous visitors was Dr. Evelyn Hart, a psychologist, who specialized in mass disappearances. She spent weeks in Millfield, interviewing townsfolk and studying the academy's history. In her book, she wrote, "The mystery of Grayson Academy is not just about what happened, but about what it means to those left behind. The legend has become a mirror, reflecting the hopes, fears, and secrets of an entire community." Dr. Hart's interviews revealed the emotional scars left by the tragedy. She spoke with parents who still set a place at the table for their missing child, with teachers who blamed themselves for not seeing the signs, and with children who grew up in the shadow of the academy. Their stories were filled with grief, guilt, and longing, a longing for answers, for closure, for the return of what had been lost. One woman, Mrs. Parker, shared her memories of the last day she saw her daughter Clara. She was so excited. About the talent showcase, Mrs. Parker recalled, her voice trembling. She wore her best dress and played her song perfectly. I hugged her good night and told her how proud I was. I never imagined it would be the last time. Others spoke of the dreams that haunted them. Sometimes I see Tommy in my sleep, said Mr. Evans, whose son was among the missing. He's standing in the schoolyard, waving at me. I try to run to him, but I can never reach him. I wake up crying every time. The legend of the Academy also became a part of pop culture. It inspired novels, movies, and even a popular radio series. The story was featured in a magazine article titled America's Creepiest Unsolved School Disappearances, which brought the mystery to a new generation. Millions read, their curiosity piqued by the promise of horror and the hope of answers. But for the people of Millfield, the story was not entertainment. It was a wound that had never fully healed. As the years passed, new theories emerged. Some believed the Academy was a time slip, a place where the past and present overlapped. Others thought the students and teachers had been abducted by aliens, or that they had simply chosen to leave, starting a new life somewhere far away. Each theory was debated, dissected, and added to the growing tapestry of legend. But for every theory, there were questions that could not be answered. Why was there no sign of struggle? Why did the building remain untouched, as if waiting for the missing to return? And what was the meaning of the symbol, a message, a warning, or something else entirely? The Academy itself seemed to feed the legend. It stood silent and unchanged, its windows dark, its doors locked. The grass grew wild around it, and the trees pressed closer each year. Some said the building was alive, that it remembered what had happened and was waiting for someone to solve its riddle. A new generation of Millfield's children grew up hearing the stories. Some were frightened, others fascinated. They dared each other to approach the Academy, to peek through the cracks in the boards, to listen for the voices of the missing. A few claimed to have seen faces in the windows, or to have heard music playing in the empty halls. The bravest among them tried to spend the night on the Academy grounds, but none ever made it until morning. The town's elders watched with a mixture of pride and sorrow as the legend grew. They knew the story would never die, that it would be told and retold as long as the Academy stood. Some hoped that one day the truth would be found. Others believed the mystery was better left unsolved. One autumn, a group of researchers arrived in Millfield, determined to uncover the truth. They brought with them cameras, notebooks, and a sense of purpose. They interviewed townsfolk, studied old records, and mapped the Academy's layout. They even managed to convince the town council to let them enter the building under strict supervision. Inside, they found the Academy just as it had been left, desks neatly arranged, books open, pencils still in hand. The symbol was still visible on the headmaster's desk, faded but unmistakable. The air was thick with dust, and every sound echoed through the empty halls. As they explored, one of the researchers, a young woman named Claire, found something strange in the art room, a painting that none of the townsfolk remembered. It showed the Academy on a hill, surrounded by swirling clouds and shadowy figures. In the center was the symbol, glowing with an eerie light. Claire brought the painting to the others, her hands shaking. "I think this is the clue," she said, "but I don't know what it means." The discovery reignited interest in the mystery. The researchers published their findings, and the story spread once again. People from all over the world came to Millfield, hoping to see the Academy, to feel the weight of its secrets, to be a part of the legend. But the truth remained elusive. The Academy kept its silence, its secrets locked away. Theories and legends continued to grow, each one adding to the mystery, each one keeping the story alive. And so Grayson Academy stood silent and untouched, a monument to a mystery that had changed Millfield forever. Its legend was a living thing, growing and changing with each passing year, a reminder that some questions have no answers, and that some stories are never truly over. What did the researchers discover in the art room? And why did this symbol appear in places no one expected? In the next chapter, a new generation returns to the academy, and what they experience will leave you breathless. The moment when the past and present collide is coming. Time has a way of softening even the sharpest memories. But in Millfield, the story of Grayson Academy never faded into the background. It remained a living legend, a place that called to the curious and the brave. For decades, the academy stood, untouched, its secrets locked away behind boarded windows and rusted doors. But every so often, a new generation would feel the pull of the mystery, unable to resist the urge to seek answers. Where none had ever been found out, it was the summer of 1987 when the legend flared to life once more. Millfield had changed. New families had moved in. The old shops had been replaced by modern stores. And the children who once whispered about the academy were now parents themselves. But the building on the hill still cast its long shadow, and the story of the vanishing was still told at every sleepover, every campfire, every Halloween night. That summer, a group of teenagers, Emma, Lucas, Sarah, and Ben, decided they would do what no one else had dared. They would enter Grayson Academy and spend the night inside. It started as a dare, a way to prove their courage. But as the day approached, it became something more. Each of them had grown up hearing the stories. Each of them had a personal reason for wanting to know the truth. Emma's grandmother had been a student at the academy, one of the few who had left just before the vanishing. She had never spoken of her time there, but Emma had found an old photograph in a dusty box her grandmother, smiling in her school uniform, standing in front of the building with friends who had never come home. Lucas's great-uncle had been one of the teachers, and his family still kept a faded letter he had written the week before he disappeared. Sarah and Ben were drawn by the thrill of the unknown, the hope that they might be the ones to finally solve the mystery. The plan was simple. They would wait until midnight, then slip through a gap in the fence behind the academy. Ben had found a loose board near the basement window, and Lucas had borrowed his father's crowbar. They packed flashlights, snacks, a camera, and a notebook to record anything they found. Emma brought her grandmother's photograph, hoping it might bring them luck. As the sun set, the group met at the edge of the woods, their nerves hidden behind forced laughter and bravado. The air was thick with the scent of summer grass and the distant hum of crickets. The academy loomed above them, its windows dark, its walls covered in ivy and moss. "Are we really doing this?" Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. "We have." "Two," Emma replied, her eyes fixed on the building. "We need to know." They waited until the town was asleep, then crept up the hill, their footsteps muffled by the soft earth. The fence was easy to slip through, and the loose board came. Away with a quiet groan. One by one, they crawled through the basement window, landing in a cloud of dust and darkness. Inside, the air was cold and still. Their flashlights cut through the gloom, revealing a world frozen in time. The basement was filled with old desks, broken chairs, and boxes of forgotten books. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling, and the floor was covered in a thick layer of dust. They moved quietly in, their hearts pounding. Every sound seemed amplified. The creak of the floorboards, the whisper of their breath, the distant drip of water. They climbed the stairs to the main floor, emerging into the hallway they had all imagined 1,000 times. It was exactly as the stories had said. The classrooms were untouched, desks neatly arranged, books open, pencils still in hand. The blackboards were covered in faded lessons, and the air smelled of chalk and old paper. In the dining hall, plates of uneaten food sat on the tables, as if the students had simply vanished in the middle of breakfast. The dormitories were just as untouched beds made, clothes folded, shoes lined up by the doors. Emma paused in front of a row of lockers, her flashlight beam catching on a nameplate. It was her grandmother's. She reached out, her fingers trembling, and opened the locker. Inside was a single book, its pages yellowed with age. She opened it and found a note tucked inside a letter addressed to her grandmother, written in ink. A careful, looping script. Emma read the letter aloud, her voice barely more than a whisper. It spoke of friendship, of dreams, of the excitement for the talent showcase. It ended with a single line: "Don't forget the promise we made. No matter what happens, we'll find each other again." The group fell silent, the weight of the past pressing down on them. For a moment, it felt as if the missing were still there, just out of sight, waiting to be found. They continued their exploration, moving from room to room. In the headmaster's office, they found the symbol still visible on the desk, though faded with time. Lucas traced the lines with his finger, shivering at the cold that seemed to seep from the wood. "What do you think it means?" Ben asked, his voice barely steady. "I don't know," Lucas replied. "But it feels important, like it's trying to tell us something." Sarah took a photograph, the flash illuminating the room for a split second. In that moment, Emma thought. She saw a shadow move in the corner, but when she turned, there was nothing there. As the night wore on, the group grew more uneasy. The building seemed to shift around them, the halls growing longer, the shadows deeper. They heard footsteps in the distance, whispers in the walls, the faint sound of music drifting through the air. At one point, Ben swore he saw a figure standing at the end of the hallway, a tall, thin man in a dark coat. But when they ran to investigate, the hallway was empty. They gathered in the auditorium, sitting on the stage where the last talent showcase had been held. Emma placed her grandmother's photograph on the floor, the faces of the missing smiling up at them. "Do you think they're still here?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know," Emma replied, "but I feel like they're watching. U.S., like they want us to find something." Lucas opened his notebook and began to write, recording everything they had seen and heard. He wrote about the symbol, the letter, the shadows, and the feeling that the academy was alive, aware of their presence. As the clock struck 3, the air grew colder. The group huddled together, their flashlights flickering. Suddenly, the lights in the auditorium blazed to life, flooding the room with harsh white light. The group froze, their eyes wide with terror. A voice echoed through the room, a soft, distant whisper, impossible to understand. The sound grew louder, filling the space with a chorus of voices, all speaking at once. The group clung to each other, their hearts pounding. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the lights went out. The voices faded, leaving only silence. The group fled the building, stumbling through the darkness, their fear overwhelming. They crawled through the basement window, ran down the hill, and didn't stop until they reached the safety of the woods. When they finally looked back, the academy was dark and silent once more, as if nothing had happened. The next morning, the group met at Emma's house, their faces pale and drawn. They compared notes, photographs, and memories, trying to make sense of what they had experienced. The photograph showed nothing unusual, no shadows, no figures, no evidence of the voices or the lights. But the letter Emma had found was real, and so was the symbol. They agreed to keep their experience a secret, afraid of what others might say. But the legend of the academy grew stronger, fueled by their story and the evidence they had gathered. For Emma, Lucas, Sarah, and Ben, the experience changed them forever. They carried the weight of the mystery with them, always wondering what they had seen, what they had heard, and what secrets the academy still held. Grayson Academy remained silent and untouched, a monument to a mystery that had changed Millfield forever. Its secrets were still locked away, waiting for someone brave enough or foolish enough to uncover them. And so the legend lived on, growing with each passing year, a reminder that some questions have no answers and that some stories are never truly over. They entered the academy seeking answers, but what they found was something no one could explain. What did Emma's grandmother's letter reveal? And why did the voices in the darkness sound so familiar? In the next chapter, the aftermath shakes Millfield to its core. The questions only grow deeper, and the legend refuses to die. The summer of 1987 left Millfield changed once again. The four teenagers, Emma, Lucas, Sarah, and Ben, had returned from Grayson Academy with stories that would ripple through the town for years. Though they had agreed to keep their experience, secrets in Millfield had a way of slipping out, especially when they were tied to the academy on the hill dot at first. The group tried to go back to their normal lives. Emma tucked her grandmother's letter away in a drawer. Lucas hid the notebook beneath his bed, and Sarah and Ben deleted the photographs from their camera, afraid of what they might find if they looked too closely. But the memory of that night clung to them, surfacing in dreams and in the quiet moments. When the world seemed to hold its breath, Emma found herself drawn to the academy more than ever. She would walk past it on her way home, pausing at the edge of the fence, staring up at the boarded windows. Sometimes she thought she saw movement. Inside a flicker of light, a shadow passing by. Other times she heard music, faint and distant, drifting on the wind. She wondered if her grandmother had ever felt the same pull, the same sense that something unfinished lingered in the air. Lucas became obsessed with the symbol they had found on the headmaster's desk. He spent hours in the library, poring over books on ancient languages, secret societies, and lost civilizations. He wrote letters to professors and experts, sending sketches of the symbol and asking for their opinions. Most replied with polite confusion, but a few hinted at connections to old European folklore, to stories of doors between worlds and marks left by those who had crossed over. Sarah and Ben tried to move on, but the experience had changed them. Sarah found herself waking in the middle of the night, convinced she heard voices whispering her name. Ben, once the most skeptical of the group, now avoided the academy entirely, crossing the street whenever he passed by. He told himself it was just nerves, but deep down he knew the truth. The academy had left its mark on him, just as it had on everyone who had ever entered its halls. Word of their adventure spread through Millfield, despite their best efforts to keep it quiet. The town was hungry for answers, for any new detail that might shed light on the mystery. Some people were angry, accusing the teenagers of trespassing and stirring up old wounds. Others were fascinated, eager to hear every detail, every whisper of the supernatural. The town council called a meeting to discuss the renewed interest in the academy. The room was packed, the air thick with tension. Some argued that the building should be torn down, that it was a blight on the town and a danger to anyone who entered. Others insisted should be preserved a monument to the past and a reminder of the questions that still haunted Millfield. Emma's mother stood up, her voice trembling. "My daughter went into that building because she wanted to understand what happened to her grandmother. She came back changed. I don't know what she saw, but I know she's not the same. We can't just pretend this never happened." An older man, Mr. Grady, shook his head. "We've lived with this mystery for more than 50 years. Maybe it's time to let it go. Some things aren't meant to be understood." But the questions would not go away. The town was divided, torn between the desire for closure and the fear of what the truth might bring. The local newspaper ran a series of articles about the academy, interviewing anyone who had a story to tell. Old photographs were dug out of attics. Letters and diaries were shared, and the legend grew with each new detail. The story caught the attention of a national magazine, and soon Millfield was once again in the spotlight. A team of paranormal investigators arrived, setting up cameras and sensors around the academy. They spent several nights inside, recording hours of footage. Their final report was inconclusive strange noises, unexplained cold spots, and a few fleeting shadows, but nothing that could be called proof. Still, their presence reignited the debate, and the Academy became a destination for ghost hunters and thrill seekers from across the country. The renewed attention brought back old memories for the families of the missing. Some welcomed the chance to share their stories, hoping that someone somewhere might have an answer. Others retreated into silence, unwilling to reopen old wounds. The pain of loss was still fresh, even after all these years. Emma's grandmother, now in her 80s, finally agreed to speak about her time at the Academy. She sat in her living room, surrounded by photographs and mementos, her hands trembling as she spoke. "It was a wonderful place at first," she said, her voice soft. "We were all so proud to be chosen. The teachers were kind. The classes were exciting. But there was always something strange. Sometimes I would wake up in the middle of the night and hear music, even though everyone was asleep. Other times I would find symbols drawn on my desk or see shadows moving in the halls." She paused, her eyes distant. "A night before the vanishing, I had a dream. I saw the Academy surrounded by mist, and I heard voices calling my name. When I woke up, I felt a terrible sense of dread. I begged my parents to let me come home, and they agreed. I left that morning. The next day, everyone was gone." Her story added a new layer to the legend, a personal connection that made the mystery feel even more real. Emma listened, her heart aching for the girl her grandmother had once been, and for all the children who had never come home. Lucas continued his research. Convinced that the symbol was the key to understanding what had happened, he found references to similar marks in old European text symbols used to mark places where the veil between worlds was thin, where people had vanished or returned changed. He shared his findings with Emma, who began to wonder if the Academy had been built on such a place, if the vanishing was not an accident, but the result of something ancient and powerful. Sarah and Ben struggled to make sense of their experience. They talked late into the night, trying to piece together what they had seen and heard. They remembered the voices, the lights, the feeling of being watched. They wondered if the missing were still there, trapped in some other world, waiting to be found. The town of Millfield was once again caught in the grip of the mystery. The Academy stood silent and untouched, its secrets locked away. The questions lingered, haunting the town and everyone who heard the story. What happened to the students and teachers of Grayson Academy? Where did they go? Was it a crime, a curse, or something beyond understanding? Why did the building remain untouched, as if waiting for the missing to return? And what was the meaning of the symbol? A message, a warning, or something else entirely? The answers, if they existed, were hidden deep within the walls of the Academy, place frozen in time, haunted by the memory of those who had vanished overnight. As the years passed, the legend grew. New theories emerged. New stories were told, but the truth remained elusive. The Academy became a symbol of the unknown, a reminder that some mysteries are never meant to be solved, and so Grayson Academy stood silent and untouched, a monument to a mystery that had changed Millfield forever. Its secrets were still locked, away, waiting for someone brave enough or foolish enough to uncover them. The unanswered questions lingered, a challenge to anyone who heard the story. Would you dare to enter? Would you risk everything to find the truth? Or would you, like so many before, turn away, content to let the past remain a mystery? The town is divided, the mystery more alive than ever. What did the symbol really mean? And is the Academy truly waiting for someone to unlock its final secret? In our next chapter, we confront the legacy of Grayson Academy and the question that haunts everyone who hears the story. The last secret is the most chilling of all. Grayson Academy still stands on the hill above Millfield, its red bricks faded, its windows dark, its secrets sealed behind layers of dust and silence. For nearly a century, it has watched over the town, a silent witness to the lives that have come and gone, to the questions that have never been answered. The building is more than just a relic of the past. It is a living legend, a symbol of hope, loss, and the enduring power of mystery. As the years have passed, the story of the Academy has become woven into the very fabric of Millfield. It is told in whispers at bedtime, in laughter around campfires, in the nervous glances of children who dare each other to run up the hill and touch the front door. It is a story that has shaped the town's identity, a shadow that stretches across generations. For some, the Academy is a place of sorrow, a reminder of loved ones lost, of dreams that ended too soon. For others, it is a source of fascination, a puzzle that begs to be solved. And for a few, it is a warning that even the brightest places can hold darkness, that even the most promising futures can be snatched away in an instant. The legend of Grayson Academy has inspired countless theories, books, and films. It has drawn researchers, thrill-seekers, and the simply curious from all over the world. Some come hoping to find answers. Others come simply to feel the weight of history, to stand in the presence of a mystery that has defied explanation for so long. But the Academy itself remains unchanged. The doors are still locked, the windows still boarded. The classrooms are still filled with the echoes of laughter and learning. The dining hall still set for a meal that will never be eaten. The symbol on the headmaster's desk is still there, faded but unmistakable, a silent challenge to anyone who dares to seek the truth. The people of Millfield have learned to live with the mystery. Some have made peace with it, accepting that not all questions have answers. Others still hope for closure, for a discovery that will finally explain what happened on that fateful night in 1940. But all agree that the Academy has left its mark, not just on the town, but on everyone who has ever heard its story. Emma, Lucas, Sarah, and Ben have grown older, but the memory of their night in the Academy has never left them. Emma still keeps her grandmother's letter, reading it on quiet evenings when the world feels especially mysterious. Lucas continues to search for the meaning of the symbol, convinced that the answer is out there, waiting to be found. Sarah and Ben have moved away, but they still talk about that summer, about the voices and the lights, and the feeling that they were part of something much bigger than themselves. The families of the missing have found their own ways to remember. Some hold annual vigils at the base of the hill, lighting candles and sharing stories. Others have created scrapbooks filled with photographs and letters, preserving the memories of those who vanished. The pain of loss is still there, but so is the hope that one day the truth will come to light. The Academy's legacy is not just one of tragedy, but of resilience. It is a reminder that even in the face of the unknown, people can find strength in each other, in their memories, and in their determination to keep searching for answers. It is a testament to the power of community, to the bonds that hold people together even when everything else falls apart. The story of Grayson Academy has also become a source of inspiration. Writers, artists, and musicians have drawn on its mystery, creating works that explore the themes of loss, hope, and the search for meaning. The Academy has become a symbol of the human desire to understand, to make sense of the world, even when the answers are out of reach. But perhaps the most important legacy of the Academy is the way it has brought people together. The mystery has sparked conversations, forged friendships, and created a sense of shared purpose. It has reminded the people of Millfield and everyone who hears the story that they are not alone in their search for answers. As the sun sets over Millfield, the Academy stands in silhouette against the sky, its outlines softened by time and memory. The wind rustles through the trees, carrying with it the echoes of laughter, the strains of music, the whispers of secrets that have never been told. The building is silent, but it is not empty. It is filled with the hopes and dreams of generations, with the questions that have shaped a town and captured the imagination of the world. And so Grayson Academy endures, a monument to the mysteries that define us, to the stories that bind us together, to the legacy of those who came before. It is a place where the past and the present meet, where the line between reality and legend is forever blurred. As you listen to this story, perhaps you find yourself wondering, what would you have done if you were there that night? Would you have dared to enter the academy, to seek the truth, to face the unknown? Or would you, like so many before, have turned away, content to let the past remain a mystery? The academy invites us all to ask these questions, to look inward, to confront the shadows in our own hearts. It reminds us that some mysteries are never meant to be solved, but that the search for answers is what makes us human. The story ends here, but the questions linger. What happened to the students and teachers who vanished overnight? What secrets does the academy still hold? And will the truth ever be found? Perhaps one day, someone will unlock the doors, step inside, and discover what really happened on that fateful night. Until then, Grayson Academy will remain a silent guardian of its secrets, a beacon for the curious, a legacy for all who dare to wonder. The story ends, but the questions linger. What would you do if you faced the unknown? Would you dare to seek the truth, or let the past remain a mystery? If this story left you with chills, share your thoughts with those around you. For every legend, there is a listener. For every secret, a seeker. And for every ending, a new beginning waits in the shadows. Night falls gently over Millfield, and Grayson Academy stands as it always has, silent, watchful, and unchanged. The town below has learned to live with its questions, but the legend of the academy is as alive as ever. For some, it is a story, to be told around campfires. For others, it is a wound that never truly healed. And for a few, it is a challenge, a riddle that demands to be solved in the years since the last great search. The academy has become a place of pilgrimage. People come from all over, drawn by the promise of answers or the thrill of the unknown. Some bring cameras and notebooks, hoping to capture evidence of the supernatural. Others come with nothing but their curiosity and a sense of wonder. The building remains locked, its secret sealed, but the legend continues to grow. Emma, Lucas, Sarah, and Ben have all gone their separate ways, but the academy is never far from their thoughts. Emma, now a teacher herself, sometimes finds her mind drifting back to that summer night. She keeps her grandmother's letter in a small box on her desk, a reminder of the promises made and the mysteries left unsolved. Lucas, ever the researcher, has become a historian, his shelves lined with books about lost places and unsolved mysteries. Sarah and Ben, though they live in different cities, still call each other every year on the anniversary of their night. In the academy, sharing memories and wondering if they will ever truly understand what happened. The town of Millfield has changed, but the academy's shadow remains. New families move in, drawn by the beauty of the hills and the quiet streets. But it doesn't take long before they hear the story. Children still dare each other to run up to the academy's door, to press their hands against the faded wood, to listen for the echoes of laughter and music that once filled the halls. Some say the building is haunted. Others say it is simply waiting. Every so often, someone claims to have seen a light in the window, or a figure moving through the halls. A few have even reported hearing music drifting down the hill on quiet nights, a single piano note, or the faint sound of children singing. Most people dismiss these stories as tricks of the mind, but there are always those who believe. One autumn, a young woman named Grace arrived in Millfield. She was a writer, drawn by the legend of Grayson Academy and the hope that she might be the one to finally uncover its secrets. Grace spent her days in the town library, reading old newspapers and interviewing anyone who would talk. She walked the academy's perimeter, every evening, notebook in hand, searching for clues that others might have missed. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Grace noticed something strange, a glimmer of light in one of the upper windows. She paused, heart pounding, and watched as the light flickered and then disappeared. The next morning, she returned to the spot, determined to find an explanation. She found nothing but dust and silence, but the experience left her more determined than ever. Grace's curiosity led her to Emma, who was now one of the town's most respected teachers. Over cups of tea in Emma's cozy kitchen, the two women shared stories and theories. Emma showed Grace the letter her grandmother had left behind, and together they pored over its careful script, searching for hidden meanings. "It's always felt like a message," Emma said quietly. "A promise that one day someone would find the truth." Grace nodded. "Maybe the academy isn't just a place. Maybe it's a question, a challenge to keep searching, to keep asking why." Inspired, Grace wrote an article about the academy, weaving together the stories of the missing, the theories, and the memories of those left behind. The article was published in a national magazine, and soon letters began to arrive from all over the country. Some shared their own stories of loss and mystery. Others offered new theories, new clues, new hope. The renewed attention brought a sense of unity to Millfield. For the first time in years, the town felt less alone in its grief. People gathered at the base of the hill, lighting candles and sharing memories. Old wounds began to heal, not because the mystery had been solved, but because it had been shared. One evening, as the town gathered for a candlelight vigil, Emma stood at the edge of the crowd, the letter clutched in her hand. She looked up at the academy, its windows dark against the night sky, and felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. The building was still a mystery, but it was also a part of her, a part of everyone who had ever called Millfield home. As the candles flickered in the darkness, a gentle breeze swept down from the hill, carrying with it the faintest sound of music. For a moment, the crowd fell silent, listening. Some smiled, others wept, but all felt the presence of something larger than themselves, a connection to the past, to the missing, to the questions that would never be answered. In the days that followed, Grace received a letter from a reader in another state. The writer claimed to recognize the symbol from the headmaster's desk, a mark used in old European folklore to signify a place where the boundaries between worlds were thin. The letter suggested that Grayson Academy might have been built on such a place, a crossroads where the ordinary and the extraordinary met. Grace shared the letter with Emma, and together they wondered if the answer had been there all along, not in the building itself, but in the stories, the memories, the connections that bound the town together. The academy's greatest secret, they realized, was not what had happened, but how it had changed everyone who had ever known its story. As the years passed, the legend of Grayson Academy continued to grow. New generations added their own chapters, their own questions, their own hopes. The building remained silent, its doors locked, its windows dark. But the story lived on, a thread that wove through the heart of Millfield, binding past and present, loss and hope, mystery and meaning. And so, as night falls once more over Millfield, the academy stands as it always has, a silent guardian of its secrets, a beacon for the curious, a legacy for all who dare to wonder. The story ends, but the questions linger. What would you do if you faced the unknown? Would you seek the truth, or let the past remain a mystery? Perhaps one day, someone will unlock the doors, step inside, and discover what really happened on that fateful night. Until then, Grayson Academy will remain a monument to the mysteries that define us, to the stories that bind us together, to the hope that even the darkest secrets can bring us closer, if only we dare to ask. The last secret of Grayson Academy is not hidden in its walls, but in the hearts of those who remember. And as long as the story is told, the academy and the children who never grew old will never truly be forgotten.